Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be here to talk to you all about AI ethics. So, my name is Oriana Medlicott, and I am a writer, researcher, and consultant in this kind of new and emerging space of AI ethics. So, I'm really excited to be here, and it's incredible to be in such an amazing lineup of speakers. And we are Women in Tech are really paving the way. So I'm so excited to, get the chance to talk to you all today. And I hope that you can come away learning something new about AI ethics and having some little snippets and takeaways. So kind of the point of my presentation today is kind of give you a small overview of what AI ethics is, why we kind of need it in industry, and some of the key things that have happened in the last year that have kind of propelled AI and AI ethics to kind of where it is now. So yeah, I'm excited for you all to listen. So, what is AI ethics? So, AI ethics is a set of values, principles, and techniques that employ widely accepted standards of right and wrong to guide moral conduct in the development and use of AI technology. So, that's defined by the Alan Turing Institute, which obviously is a huge key player in the development of AI and incredible research and incredible principles that have come out. So, with AI ethics, it's essentially, trying to make sure that with the technology that we're bringing onto the market that's been developed at an absolute rapid rate, faster than, governments can even keep up in terms of with regulation, AI ethics is setting the kind of moral values and kind of making sure that we're not, guiding off in the wrong direction. And AI ethics has really come off the back of, many things that we've seen happen in the last 5 years, where there have been huge scandals with AI and different technologies, being racist, being sexist, discriminating against people. And I think it's very important that as a society we start to understand how AI ethics can really be embedded into our lives and really make that key difference to the way we live. And now we do live with AI on a daily basis, from social media to emails, having recommendations coming through our emails of what we should buy. These are all algorithms. These are all coming from tech companies, and this is all important that we understand how this is kind of used and what influence it has on us. So AI ethics is really trying to make sure that we stay on the right track and it doesn't get out of hand and it doesn't lead us into this kind of dark, insidious place that it has done many a time. So as I'm sure like many of you are aware, like ethics is kind of the values of right and wrong, and this is how it can guide our AI in the right direction. So the ethical principles that we have heard over, the last 5 years, and the ones that kind of are talked about all the time, really, in this AI space and in like academia and in the tech industry, are transparency, explainability, human agency and oversight, diversity and non-discrimination, sustainability, privacy and data governance, and technical robustness. So these principles I've actually taken from the EU. So the EU published the EU guidelines for trustworthy AI, and these were a set of principles that they want, people and companies to adhere to who are operating within the European Union and hopefully worldwide as well. And there's been many principles set by like Montreal, Beijing, and they all kind of have a similar aspect. Obviously, in terms of culture and where someone is living or people are in terms of society, there's going to be difference in, the set of values, i.e., in China, privacy may not be as important as it is, say, in the European Union. But as a whole, they all are kind of similar in the sense of looking to make AI safe, looking for it to be user friendly and not discriminating against the small minorities that we've seen kind of time and time again. So when you look at these principles, there's been a lot of talk now about how we kind of get these principles into actual action in the business sense. So how do we kind of convert what we're seeing on the screen into the business practice and get companies to get on board and actually get ethics embedded in every company's kind of DNA? And like you see with compliance and HR, really ethical AI needs to be part of that entire sphere. So it needs to come from the top down, really. There's been a lot of onus on data scientists and the data team to be the ones being transparent throughout the life cycle of AI, but actually we need to ensure that it's coming from the CEO, the board level, and it's embedded in all areas from the HR hiring, like we've seen with diversity and inclusion. That's a key part, and all the way into like the data teams. And it needs to be, ethics really needs to be part of the compliance of a company and the compliance in their values. So these are a few things that have happened over the past year in AI ethics, and what have been kind of key moments to kind of propelling the AI ethics space forward to where it is now. So we've had, Black Lives Matter forced IBM and other companies such as Amazon to take a break from selling their facial recognition technology to law enforcement. We've also had police in the UK being taken to court for their use of facial recognition in Wales. This was actually, and the lawyers at the time were saying this breached many human rights and data law protections. We've also had privacy scandals and privacy issues when it came to digital contact tracing, which was used to potentially combat coronavirus. And we've had the really famous fuck the algorithm that was coming out of, A-level students having their predicted grades coming from an algorithm, which was, very scandalous. It was using people's postcodes to predict whether they were likely to get a certain grade, and that was in itself is extremely classist, as I'm sure everyone can understand. And of course that caused a massive backlash, as rightly it should have done. And also we have Timnit Gebru, who was fired from Google. She was the top AI ethics researcher. She was working on a paper that was looking at the sustainability of machine learning models. So these large language models that are used by Google and Amazon, in the clouds, and they actually have serious environmental impacts, as they need large numbers of servers to keep running electricity. So it's offsetting a lot of carbon into the planet. So that was one thing that she was calling out, and also the bias within algorithms. So I think these are key moments that have happened in the last year, and the reason I brought these up is because these kind of show you why AI ethics actually is important, and why we need to be looking at the ethics of the technology that's incorporated into our everyday lives. So just looking at, for example, facial recognition, if you're not aware, facial recognition is used in the UK and is being used by the Met Police. And the problematic side of facial recognition is that it's historically not being able to recognize Black faces or darker skin tones. And this obviously causes bias and discrimination. And we've seen this time and time again happening from law enforcement. So it's really worrying that facial recognition is kind of already being used in our society. And I'm not sure how aware everyone actually is of this happening in our everyday lives. And we can't continue to have marginalized groups feeling the impacts, because these cause real life impacts. Like we saw with the A levels, there was a U-turn and ended up going off teachers' predictive grades, but the fact it was decided on with no prior knowledge from anyone else that their A-level results were going to be chosen from postcode, which is really worrying. And the fact that you would say that if you're from one area, that means you're not good enough to say get into Cambridge, versus if you were from more affluent area of the postcode, you're more likely to get into Cambridge, which is really not the case. And we shouldn't be letting these algorithms kind of reinforce already societal biases that we've seen time and time again. And with Timnit Gebru, I think this was kind of a dark moment for the AI ethics community, as she's done such incredible work in the space and she's a top researcher. And to have her fired and dismissed from Google was a really pivotal moment that made a lot of people wonder if AI ethics can actually work in big tech, and if they're actually going to be transparent about what they're doing. So that's something that we will definitely have to continue to kind of watch this space in. I mean, there's amazing people who are continuing to do this research in academia and in the big tech companies as well, but it's just whether, you know, the top level, the CEOs and the board are going to be open to combating the bias, the sustainability issues. And that's something that we're going to have to kind of like continue to watch and hope that they actually will take a stand. But many people believe, and myself included, that a lot of this is going to have to come from regulation and governments actually intervening and putting, you know, different laws and legislations in place to ensure that tech companies and other, you know, other companies are adhering to certain policies surrounding this. So why AI ethics and what makes it important, and how do companies incorporate it into their values and into the system? As I was kind of saying before, I truly believe that AI ethics has to come from, you know, the top down. I think just as it's important to talk about the ethics of AI, I think as a company you should have good values and good moral ethics in place for how you run your company, regardless of AI. So how do you treat your employees? How do you interact with society in terms of with sustainability? How do you, you know, keep a positive global impact? And I think incorporating AI ethics into the company values is key. And like I said, it should also be part of the compliance. So it needs to be just like we have HR for the compliance side of employment, we need to have AI ethics as a compliance and something that companies must adhere to. But like I said, I do believe that's going to come when there's stronger regulation coming from governments, which we are seeing a lot more coming from the European Union, in the US as well, starting to step forward with different legislations, like potential legislations. And also we have the Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation in the UK, which is incredible. And they were set up as an advisory board to the UK government to ensure that we are getting the right policies in place in terms of ethics and advising the government on how to make sure that the innovation we have in this country is ethical innovation, and that they've made some really great recommendations over the past 2 years. So for myself, it's actually very exciting to see the progress in AI ethics since I studied my master's in philosophy, where I looked at the ethics of AI and biotech, up to today. There's been a real shift in how people view AI ethics. I mean, even a year ago, you couldn't type into Google AI ethics jobs and really find anything that wasn't outside of academia. Whereas now we're seeing AI ethics consultants jobs, AI ethics consultancies like companies, and there's actually becoming more of a job role as the AI ethicist or like an AI ethics consultant. And these people are going to be really key in moving things forward, as they have the background and the knowledge of this kind of new and emerging field. And I think for anyone who's interested and wants to learn more, like there's so many great companies who are doing amazing work. So we have All Tech is Human, who are really, really incredible, the Montreal AI Ethics Institute. And we also have, like I said, the Centre for Data Ethics Innovation, and, you know, the Alan Turing Institute and Ada Lovelace. And there's just so many great places that you can go to kind of learn more about ethical AI, what's happening in tech to do with ethics, and kind of how we're going to bring this space forward in the future. So I think this is a really exciting time actually to be part of this community of people who are advocating for safer technology. And I hope that from this presentation today, you kind of have got a small taster of why this is actually very important, why we need it. You know, the real life impact this can actually have is devastating. You know, someone being wrongly identified by facial recognition, meaning they could potentially go to jail, having an algorithm choosing whether you get into university, which then has a real life effect. In America, we also had algorithms predicting how likely someone was to commit a crime, and also predicting court cases, which is so worrying in itself. And again, that's going to be affecting the Black community, as there's a real issue with racism. So these are just a few things I hope I've kind of like given a small impact to understand why this is so important, and why myself, I'm very passionate about AI ethics, and I'm passionate about making technology actually inclusive for everyone and safe for everyone. As as I think this is the only way we can move forward. And I think that's going to come from a lot more advocacy coming from this space, a lot more policies, regulation. And I do think that the younger generation are going to play a key part in this, because they're very passionate about climate change, very passionate about diversity, very passionate about transparency and making sure that the world is actually for everyone and not a small few. So I would just like to, before I end today, just tell you a bit about the podcast that I co-host with my really good friend Amanda. So Amanda is a PhD student looking at mitigating bias in conversational systems like Alexa. And she's coming from more, the technical backgrounds. And I'm coming from the philosophical consultancy background. So we're two friends who actually met in a startup, an ethics startup last summer, and we decided we want to continue working together. And we both have this strong passion for AI and ethical AI. And we thought, what a better time to make a podcast and have something that we ourselves look forward to talking about every week, and kind of make it easy and digestible for people to listen to. So you don't need any kind of technical background, you don't need any background in AI to listen, but it's also for people who do have that background as well. And we've had some great guests on, from Deloitte to the Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation, Tech 2025, TechCrunch, Sheffield University, and we're going to continue to bring on some more exciting guests in the coming months. But yeah, I would love you all to check it out and let us know. And if you have any feedback, you can reach out to us on our website, Twitter or Instagram or YouTube. And please feel free to reach out with any suggestions of topics or anything you want to hear. But yeah, we hope that we can attract some more great listeners to this, because this is something that we really just want to continue educating people on. So thank you so much for listening to me today. And I would love to hear from anyone who's passionate about tech or ethics or philosophy or art. Those are kind of my areas of real interest. So if anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm Oriana Medlicott on LinkedIn. I'm also Oriana Jane M on Twitter. And I honestly love hearing from people, and it always excites me to meet people who have similar passions. So yes, please feel free to reach out. And thank you so much for listening today. It's been amazing to talk to you all. And I really hope that you come away taking a few key pointers about the ethics of AI and why it's so important to me, and why it is actually such a key issue that we should all take seriously in the world. So thank you so much.